Hi everybody. What I'm going to do today, this is lesson 5. I'm going to introduce you to the second technique of setting the sound volume on the EV3RSTORM. And that second technique is going to be showing you how to program the EV3RSTORM to recognize the IR remote or the beacon in IR mode to set the sound level of the robot. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show the demo. It's the same demo that's at the beginning of lesson 4. And then I'm going to jump in after and I'm going to show you the programming technique to get this to work. So I'm just going to go ahead and roll the video and then I will come back in and show you how to program it.
Hi everyone, I'm going to give a brief demonstration today on how to set the sound level on the EV3RSTORM using both a technique using the IR sensor and a proximity setting by using your hand to move closer and further away from the robot, thereby making the sound higher and lower in volume. And I'll also demonstrate using the infrared beacon. I'll try and do this quick so the video isn't too boring, but what I'm going to do is start the first program. Now the first program is going to show how to set the sensor by using your hand, how to set the volume by using your hand and the infrared sensor here, and by moving my hand backwards and forwards the volume is going to go up and down. And when I get to the volume to a setting that I like, then I'm going to push the touch sensor and that will lock in the sound at that volume level, and you'll hear the robot do a little confirmation that the sound volume has been set. So let me just start the program.
Set the sound level for the robot.
And as you can see, there's a certain tone, and that's set right now at the volume level of 50. And you'll see as I put my hand towards the sensor, it's going to the volume will decrease. To go nothing, and then back it away. So if that's a volume that you like, then you just push the touch sensor.
Volume test. Volume test.
And now the setting is set. The volume is set. So I'm going to just quickly show that again. Start the program.
Set the sound level for the robot.
Move your hand. And when your hand is in a position that you like the sound to be,
Volume test. Volume test.
push the button. Okay, now the other program that I have on here is with the beacon, or the infrared remote.
Set the sound level for the robot.
Now what this does is, this, using the up and down, I'll show you here, using the up and down on the infrared sensor, push up, the robot says up, and the volume goes up in increments of 10. So, and then push down. You can hear the volume decreasing. And now there's no volume at all. Now go back up. And again, just like the other mode, when you want to set the volume, you just push the button.
Volume test. Volume test.
Okay, so that's one. Now let me show you how it's set lower.
Set the sound level for the robot.
Okay, it starts off as a default of 50, 40, 30, 20.
Volume test. Volume test.
There you go. So that's a quick way on how you can control the volume settings on your robot in a couple of different ways. And again, this demo, I have a program that I'll show you on how to do both of these settings so that you can set the sound volume on your robot so that when it then starts to operate, it's not working too loudly or too low, and it's just a way to learn some programming techniques. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Okay, so that was the demo. That shows you how the program will work. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to program it. So I've already got my Lego Home Edition software running, and I've already loaded my project that I've been using, which is EV3RSTORM. Okay, one of the things that I want to show you or talk to you about is some of the things you have to do to set up to before you start programming this. And what that is that you have to make sure that you watch lesson 3. In lesson 3, I show you how to create sound files. And for this project here, for this program that we're going to create tonight, we have to use the volume test and the set sound level. Those were also the same sound files that were used in lesson 4, and I showed you how to create them in lesson 3. The other thing we're going to need is a variable, because we want to store, as the volume goes up and down, we have to store it somewhere, and that's what we need the variable volume for, and it is a numeric variable. What you can see here is we've already created it, and that's one of the good things about Lego, is once you've created your variables within the program, it's available to your entire project. So it's saved it kind of at the project level, so you can reuse it. And that's quite important, because you want to be able to reuse the same variables and sound files, images files, etc. within the entire project, and that's the purpose of having a project. Now, what we want to do is we want to create a new program, and I believe that the old program for the infrared sensor by using your hand, that in the demo, that was the first method, but it was called set sound vol IR. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create in our second program. I'm just going to close this one if it'll close for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this one, by double clicking on it, I'm going to call this set sound vol remote. Okay. Just to quickly repeat myself from previous lessons, as you can see, there's a star here now beside the project name. What that means is that there's been a change to the project that hasn't been saved. So just to show you that, I'm going to go ahead and save the project. Now that I've added this new program, now that I've saved it, the star goes away. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go straight into the programming of how to do this. So what I'm programming now is the program that allows you to use the infrared beacon to push on the left up arrow, and the volume will go up, and the left bottom arrow, and the volume will go down. Now, the first thing that we need to do is we need the play block that's preloaded for us. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to load in our sound file, because you can hear at the beginning the robot actually prompts the operator or the user to set the sound level. So what we want to do is grab the sound block and drag it up and drop it onto the connector here. So as you can see the sound, and what we're going to do is we're going to allow it to default at the beginning to 100, because that's the maximum volume. We want to be able to hear it. I personally think it's a little bit too loud, but that's why I created these programs. So we're going to leave it at 100, and we're going to set the flag here to play until it stops. There's other settings. I'm not really going to go into those. I'm going to try and keep this short. We select a sound file, and as I mentioned before, the project sounds have already been saved. So when I select the sound level file, it's going to actually repeat what this file has says. So you're going to hear it when I click on set sound level. So let me just click that.
Set the sound level for the robot.
Okay, so now we've got our sound file in there. So we know when this program starts up, it's going to tell the user to set the sound level. Now the next thing that we want to do is we want to introduce our variable. So what we're going to do is grab this variable block, drop it up right there. And I mentioned this before, the volume variable is the only variable in the project, so it knows, the program knows to default it to that. If you were to click on this, just like if you had multiple variables, you would click on this to select a different variable. Now what we want to do is we want to write a value into this. We want to default this to 50. So what we're doing is we're writing 50 into the volume variable, okay? Write 50 into it. The other thing you do with a variable is you can read it. You can read it. So we're not going to read it yet, but right now we want to write to it. But obviously if you have a variable, you want to write to it and read from it. That's the whole point. So we're going to write numeric 50 into this variable. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to loop continuously while the user pushes up and down on the buttons to set the volume. So what we need to do is go down to our blocks, and we grab a loop control and drop it right here. Okay, it's all connected up. So the thing about the loop is we want the program to loop until something happens, because right now it's set to loop, to infinity. Click on here, and what we want to do is, if you notice in the demo, what we're going to do is we're going to loop until somebody touches the touch sensor. Okay, so now go down to your touch sensor, because this is talking about how this loop's going to end. So we want when the state changes, okay, we want this loop to stop. What state do we want to change in? It's a little bit tricky here, because for this type of a program, any one of the state changes of the touch sensor will work. If I click on here, you can see we've got a released, which means that you push down and then let go, and that's when the state changes. Or the state will only change when it's pushed all the way down, or the state changes when it's bumped, when it's tapped. So either one of these state changes, maybe except for bumped. If you're not really careful, bump doesn't happen sometimes when you really touch it lightly. But for our state change, we're just going to say when it's pressed, okay? When it's pressed, we're going to exit this loop, and then we're going to do something, and we'll worry about that later. Now, always check your ports. I believe that the port that we want to use is 1 for this, and I believe that that's what the touch sensor is on. So we'll leave it there. Again, I think that any of the sensors, like the infrared sensor, the touch sensor, the ultraviolet or the color sensor, any other sensors that you have, they usually go on the numbered ports, whereas the lettered ports are for the motors. So A, B, C, D are the 4 ports for motors, and 1, 2, 3, 4 are the 4 ports for sensors. Now, within this loop, we want to do something, and within this loop, we want to read the beacon. We want to read the beacon, and we want to do something when we read the beacon. So what we're going to do is, within this loop, we're going to wait for the beacon to be pushed either on the left up button arrow or the left down button, and we are going to add 10 to our volume or subtract 10. So what we need inside this loop is we need a switch. Now, what a switch does, let me just drag up here so we can see the whole screen. Now, what a switch does, it allows you to determine what to do based on true or false. That's the default. But really what we want to do is we want to set our switch now to read the beacon. So, and the way that the robots read the beacon is through the IR sensor. So what we need to do is change this to the infrared sensor, and we need to measure the remote. So we're measuring what's been pressed on the remote. You can see that the other one was compare. We don't want to do any of the comparisons right now. That's more used for how far away stuff is from the beacon, from the infrared sensor, and how close things are, etc. But we don't really want to use that one. We want to measure the remote just to see what state we're at. And as you can see, as soon as we set to measure remote, the switch changed to kind of a case where we have multiple cases. Normally when you have a switch, not normally, but in a lot of cases when you have a switch, it's plus or minus, it's positive or negative, check mark or X. But in this case, it knows that if you're going to measure the remote, it's got to have multiple cases. And I'll show you later how to create a case. So, and what we want to do is always check your ports. I believe that port 4 is the valid port for this. Yes, it is. And again, we want to be on channel 1. So this is going to use channel 1. Now, let's get into the switch. So we need to figure out what's going to happen when something is done, okay? And right now, it's kind of the default case, which we actually need to change. So right away, I'm just going to show you how to add a case. So add a case so that now we have 3 cases, okay? We have this case, and this case. What we want to do is when we're in this loop, we don't want to do anything if the user doesn't push on the remote. So what we do is we set, and that's what this radio button is for. It's to set the default case. Now, and the question mark is here is because there's nothing been assigned. So click on the question mark, and up will pop the different settings that the remote can do. As you can see, nothing, top left, top right, bottom right, top 2 buttons, you get it. So these are how you control. So actually, in the movement program on the EV3RSTORM, this is all very important because you push left up, it does certain things, push left, right down, blah, blah, blah. So what we're going to do is for our default case, we're just going to set it to when nothing is done. So when nothing is done, nothing will happen in our program, which is good. So now what we want to do is introduce the first case, and I'm just going to show you the programming technique on how to use the variable and how to set the variable to a different value. Now, what we want to happen is in the top left, that means that we want to set the volume to go up 10. As you can see, we've defaulted to 50, and we're going to want this to go up and up and up, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our variable, okay? We're going to drop it on the line, and now what we need to do is we need to add a math statement. We need to add a math statement that's going to add 10 to the volume variable every time somebody pushes on the up, okay? So go down here and grab the math block, and drag it up and drop it. Whoops, switch that, drop it beside it. Now, here's a little bit of a catch. We need the volume variable again, and I'll show you that why later. Okay, so grab the volume variable and put it here. Now, the reason we're doing that is because what we want to do is we want to do something when the left upper button is pushed. And what we want to do is we want to add 10 to our volume variable. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our volume variable, we're going to add 10 to it, and we're going to store it back in our variable. Okay? So that means that what we need to do is we need to change this to read mode. We need to read, and you can see here, we've got the ability to connect something. So what we want to do is we want to read the volume variable, and now here's a trick. Left click on this little block and drag over, and you'll see a line occur, and drop it onto variable in the math into A. Now what this math does is it adds A and B, and then it produces an output. So what we're saying here is take the volume variable, plop it in here, and we want to add something to it, and what we want to add is we want to add 10. Now what we're going to do therefore is every time someone pushes the up arrow, we're going to add 10 to our variable. And now what we want to do though is we want to write that output, which is right now by default it'll be at the beginning it'll be 50, and the first time somebody pushes something we're going to add 10 to it, but we need to put the output. So again, left click till you see a line occurring, then you drop it into here. So now what this is doing is this is saying take the current volume variable, add 10 to it, and store it back in the volume variable. So what happens now is the volume is going to increase by 10 every time somebody pushes the top left button until they end this program by touching the touch sensor. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take another volume variable and drop it in here, and I'm going to take another math block, drop it in here, and another volume variable and drop it in here. Now, what I want to do is I want to pick the case of what this is. Up here we have the top left. This now the case will be the bottom left. Okay? So now we've got a case where if the user pushes the top left, we do something. If they push the bottom left, we do something. And if they push nothing, we do nothing, which is great. The other thing I just kind of want to mention is to get rid of one of these cases, just click on the X here. To make the default, you click on the radio button, but as we know, we don't want to do, I think that if you set the default to be one of these cases, either this one or this one, the volume's either just going to go up and up and up and up and up, even when you just sit there. So we want the default case to be nothing. Now, what we need to do is we need to kind of do the opposite. When the user presses the bottom left, we want to subtract from the volume. So what we want to do is we want to read our numeric value, left click and hold, drag it into A, drop it, and what we want to do is we want to subtract. Oh, sorry. Okay, I missed something. We don't type in -10 here. We actually change the math logic to be a subtract, or the math function, I suppose we should say. You can see that there's other math functions here. I'm not going to go into those right now, but there's definitely other stuff you can do. So what we want to do is we want to subtract, and what we want to do is we want to subtract 10. Okay, we want to subtract 10 from A, and then what we want to do is we want to write the output into the volume variable. So now what you're going to see is you're going to see that we have two cases now where we add 10 to the volume when they push the upper left, and we subtract 10. I'm almost done the program, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start up my EverStorm because I want to load this on there. So I'm going to start up the EverStorm, and I'm actually going to, once it starts up, then I'm going to plug it in. You might hear a little bit of noise, I apologize, but I definitely want to test this program, even though I've already kind of got it loaded. I'm just going to test it, make sure it works. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to do that loop. So there's a couple of things I want to mention. In the demo, you may have noticed that you default this to 50, and what's happening is you're adding 10 every time the user pushes on the left upper button to go up. Now, one of the things I haven't done here, I'm not going to bother in this lesson, is actually there's a little bit of an issue with this because The good thing is that the 10 is added, but the bad thing is that there's actually a maximum volume of 100. But when the volume is set to over 100, it will just stay at 100 for the robot itself. Like, it won't recognize if you tell it to play the volume of 110 or 120, it'll still just play at 100. What I would like to do in a future lesson is show you how to actually limit the value, so that if the user, right now it starts at 50, so that means if the guy pushes the up arrow 8 times, that's going to be adding 80 to it, it's going to be at 130. So technically, when he starts pushing the down button, it's still going to stay really loud until he gets down below 100. So really what you should probably do is put a limit on this, but I'm not going to bother going into that right now. I don't really have a lot of time, but maybe that's what my next lesson will be, is show you how to put limits. Anyways, I just wanted you guys to know that if you do push the volume button more than 5 times, or 6 times, I guess, or 6 times, it's going to go above 100. But that won't impact the volume. It'll still stay at 100 for the robot itself, even though the variable is at 110. But the problem is, when you push the down arrow the first time, it's actually not going to go below 100 because it's at 110. It's going to go down to 100. So I just kind of wanted you to know that. But we will in the future add a program. We'll probably add a technique in there that will cap it. So what we want to do now, though, is when the user pops out of this loop, we want to play a file so that they can hear what the volume is that they've set it at. So now what we want to do is we need to introduce our variable again. Okay, and we're going to set it to read. Okay, because we're going to read that, and we're going to put that into our sound file that's going to say something to the user. Okay, and it's going to be the volume.
Volume test. Volume test.
Okay, now we've got the volume test, volume test, volume test. Now, what I wanted to do was, that I didn't show you guys how to do, is that's how we end the program. But another thing that we want to do is, as the user is pushing the up arrow and the down arrow, we need a way to hear what the current setting is. Hear it. You could put something in here where it says, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, but that's just too much work. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to say the words, I'm going to have the robot, say the words up and down when we go up and down. So what we want to do is, we want to add a sound file inside the switch. So what we're going to do is, we're going to take a sound file and we're going to drop it inside the switch. Okay. And we're going to pick the file up. Now, and just to quickly do that, we're going to add the one here, and we're going to do down. And because I've already used these project files, the sounds before, they're actually showing up in here. You can go and try and find it. Actually, if you go down, you can see that there's Lego sound files. You can go and kind of look through there, but to keep this quick, actually, it's in here somewhere. If you go and look in the Lego sound files, you'll find it somewhere in there, but I'm just going to, I've already used it before, so it's here right now for me to pick. Okay? Now, the catch is, what we want to do is, we want to actually say the up and down at the volume level that we've set. So the way I can do that is, this is a little bit of a trick, okay? We can actually take the output. Let me just try this here. Okay? We could take the output of the ad and we can actually drop it here. So now, not only is the math populating the volume variable, at the same time it's also playing a sound, the up sound, at the same setting as here. This is kind of a neat technique where the output of a math block can be sent to multiple other blocks. Otherwise, I would have to add my volume variable again in read mode and then plop it in, so I'm actually saving myself a block by doing this. So we're going to do the same thing down here. We're going to left click on the solution or the result of this math, and we're going to drop it on the down variable. Sorry, the down block, or the down sound block. I'm going to save this, okay? Because I believe it's done, and I'm just going to minimize this a little bit to show that you can see the whole thing on one screen. I'm going to plug in my Mindstorm. I apologize for the noise. Okay. Let's just see if this thing connects up. Okay. We're all connected here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the beacon. You're not going to be able to see this, by the way. This is off camera, but this is the same. I just want to make sure this program works. So again, let me just quickly walk you through. You know what? I actually might show you something really cool. Okay, so what's going to happen is it's going to say set the sound level. We're going to default the volume to 50. We're going to run in a continuous loop until the touch sensor is pushed at the volume level that I like. It's going to read the beacon. The infrared sensor will read the beacon. If I push on the top left, it's going to go volume up. If I pushed on the top, on the bottom left, it's going to go volume down. And once I push the touch sensor, it's going to say the final volume test at the setting that I've got. So what I want to do is I want to show you a cool little trick. I'm going to download and run this program, okay? Now, you may have heard that, but it's at 50 right now. It's saying set the sound level for the robot, and it's been set to 50. So I'm going to push the top left to go up one. So I pushed it 3 times. Now, you may not be able to pick this up on the video, but what happens is if you have this open and you're running the program in the mode where you've just done the download and play, you can actually hover over the lines and it will show you what's going on. And right now, I don't know if you could tell, but right now it's stuck in this loop right now. This is kind of flickering a little bit. That means that that's where this is. Now, I'm going to push here. What I'm going to do, you can see that the volume level is 70 right now. I'm going to push down once and go down to here. Let's just see if I can find. Go down again. See, now it's 60. Move it away. It's 50. Okay. It's really sensitive. You got to hover right on the line. I'm trying to hover on the line. There's 60. That's what the setting is right now. It's 50. 40. Now go up here. Up. Up. There it's at 100. And this is what I mean by 110. Even though it's at 110, it can't go. The volume can't go any higher than 110. So it's actually still at 100 for the sake of what the volume's at. And when I push down, okay, now you can see that there's it's a little bit misleading right now because when I'm on this variable, okay, this is actually kind of annoying. I don't know why it's doing this, to be honest. There should be an easier way to hover over this line and see the volume, but I'm trying to show you how that works, but it's not really working out that well. Okay, but again, there we go. So anyways, it's just something you can fool around with because that's actually a way to really troubleshoot your program. If you build a kind of a complicated thing that's got a lot going on, then you can actually, these are called wires. You can hover over your wire, you can see the variable, and you can see the volume. You can see the setting. So as you can see, and what I'm just going to do is, I'm just going to pop out now by pushing on the touch sensor. Let's just set it to the maximum volume. Okay, so now I know I'm one more. I'm at 100, and I'm going to push the touch sensor quickly. There, you can see now it's been set. Okay, so hope you've enjoyed the video. Hope you can know how to do this program. And good luck, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.